we will just dive right in. So we're going to really start from that moment when you take a look at your website and you think, you know what, I need a new website. And either you're going to start that process yourself, or maybe you're going to seek someone out to help you make that happen. So the first thing you're going to think about is, why do I want a website redesign? And if you go to a designer and you just say, I want a new website because I don't like my old design, or I'm bored with my design, or whatever that may be, those really aren't good reasons to redesign your website. Good reasons would be, I really want to improve my usability, or I have a new branding strategy, I want to realign my website with that, or I've been hearing about this whole responsive web design thing. Maybe I want to look into that. Or I really need to refresh my content, and to the extent that you can start doing or start thinking about quantifiable goals, that's going to be really helpful for moving forward. So so when you sit down and have that first discovery meeting, thinking about, your business goals and quantifiable web goals are going to be really important. So let's just take a look at some good quantifiable goals. Those are going to be things like reducing your bounce rate, or converting more visitors into actual leads or customers, or doing something to attempt to increase the number of unique visitors, or maybe you just want to build a bigger subscriber list. Generally, if you could access a free tool such as Google Analytics, that's going to give you a good starting off point for analyzing the effectiveness of your website. So if you have the opportunity to look at current analytics, whether that be Google or some other tool, that's going to give you something to compare your final results against when your website project is actually finished. So I think one of the best ways to do this is to just take a moment and just kind of benchmark your current metrics. If you want to put it in a spreadsheet or just write down notes, whatever that process looks like to you, take note of numbers. Take a look at your current visitors, look at the bounce rate, note the amount of time people are spending on your site. And I think once you start looking at those numbers, those can really start to help inform your goals and, kind of fuel that strategy for your site.
As well as JC had mentioned there too, the whole Google Analytics piece, there's tons of marketing automation software out there nowadays. And once again, it really all comes down to numbers and hitting those goals and utilizing marketing automation software. There's expensive software out there, but as well as pretty inexpensive software out there. So no matter the size of your company or organization, there is a solution out there that you can actually, figure out these numbers to reduce bounce rates and convert leads into customers, and really hit on those goals that you have as your starting point.
Yeah, and it's actually really amazing what a lot of those numbers can tell you. For example, just a hypothetical, say you're looking at your analytics and you see you have a decent amount of website visitors, but your bounce rate is really high. So if you kind of dig into, that can tell you a lot. It might tell you that people are coming to your site, they found you in Google or wherever, but they get to your site and then they're leaving because maybe they're not able to find that thing right away. So that could mean, maybe my messaging isn't very clear. Maybe it's confusing, or maybe I need to relook at my navigation structure. They're coming to my site, but maybe they can't find what that next step is. So then that would inform your goal for your redesign to be redo my messaging so it makes more sense, it's easier to understand, and really focus on creating that better structured navigation system. Additionally, another thing analytics might tell you is where your customers are coming from and what devices they're using. If you notice that over 50% of your visitors are visiting your site from a mobile device, but your site isn't optimized for mobile, then that could be a really big indicator that that's what you need to focus on for your redesign. Whatever you do, you want to make sure you're capturing those people, and that would be then fueling this kind of whole preparation planning process. So that brings us to our first secret.
Secret number one.
Yes. Secret number one, which is simply when you're going through this planning phase, don't be afraid to ask for feedback. It's important to look at those analytics, like I said, but sometimes numbers can only tell you so much. So to the extent that you can get feedback from current customers and employees or others in your organization about what they like and dislike about your site and what works and what doesn't work, that's going to be really valuable moving forward. You probably have, when you think about starting a website redesign, it's likely that within your company or organization, you might have a couple of individuals helping you kind of coordinate and work on the project, but really don't be afraid to reach out to others. within your organization, especially if your website is affecting your whole organization. We have had clients where, one small group, like the marketing team, is working on the website, but they don't really ask other voices within the company what they need to for the website to be successful in their eyes. For example, if you don't ask for their opinions, you might miss out on something important, like your sales team really wants to have an in-page chat feature. And that's something you just may never have even thought about before.
Exactly. So getting the feedback from more people. What happens is people get this tunnel vision, or they get pigeonholed into the idea that they need a new website and they want to redesign a new website, but they don't ask all the features and bells and whistles that everyone actually might need to utilize to make your website successful. Based upon your vision, your values, and the goals that you have for your company or organization with your website.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, you can also reach out to customers if that's something that makes sense for you. Just sending out a survey and collecting some feedback from them. Obviously, they're the ones that you want to have the best experience on your website. So
Yes.
If you can get that, then that's really good too. So that brings us to step 2, which is more of a discussion of, once you have your goals, then how do you actually translate those goals into necessary functionality for your website? So it's amazing how much those clear goals can really help you plan the exact features of your website. I'm going to go into a little example here that kind of floats around web design circles that's about building a deck. So if you, I know, it's weird.
Good analogy here.
Thank you. So if you set out to build a deck, you're going to go to a carpenter and you're going to say, hey, I want to build a deck. And they're going to ask you a lot of questions about what that needs to look like. Like, they're going to ask you, what kind of wood do you want to use to build the deck? How big will it be? Do you want any special features like railings or planters or benches? And all of these are going to lead to a really clear set of direction about not only how that deck's going to be built, but the required resources that are going to be needed in order to make that happen. So on the opposite of that, in a world where you don't plan that out and think about all those things up front, your contractor is going to make assumptions. Just like if you're not clear with your web designer up front, your web designer is going to have to make assumptions about what you need for your website. So in our deck example, contractor just shows up one day and starts building. Maybe he sees children playing in your backyard and goes, oh, there's young kids at this house. I need to make sure the railings on this deck are really high so that the kids don't fall off the deck. And then you get home, you look at the deck, you say, well, why are my railings so high? It's like, well, your kids, I don't want them to fall off. You go, oh, those are my neighbor's kids. Can you make the railings shorter? And now you have to backtrack, and then that wastes time. It probably costs money to get that all fixed. So, if you had thought about all that up front, you wouldn't have that issue.
Exactly.
So bringing, all this back to a web design perspective, those goals are going to lead to the functionality. One of the goals I mentioned earlier was increasing your subscriber list. And so that's great. Now we know that we actually need a subscription form that collects emails and then notifies that individual that filled out that form that they were successful in doing that. And then their information is going to go into your lead database so they actually get emails. There's a lot of stuff that happens behind the scenes, and it's really important, to say, hey, I want people to be able to subscribe. Okay, here's what we need to do to make that happen.
So the purpose of that functionality then, and mapping out those needs with either yourself, company, organization, or with said client, is really important, because you need to map it out fully so you don't miss anything on the back end.
Right.
If you don't talk about potentially having that form, then you're not going to capture the subscribers that you're looking for.
Exactly. And if you save this stuff till the end, then that's going to throw off your deadline. If you tell me the day before your website launch that you actually really wanted a photo gallery, then it's like, all right, well, now we're off schedule. So, like I said, it's all a really important part of that planning process to have these conversations up front. And the next part of this planning is, beyond the functionality, you need to think about, how is my user going to flow through my website? So I'm going to use an example of one of our clients. It's called Moxie, and they make a fitness device. And when we set out to redesign their website, we said, okay, what's the goal of this? So, well, we want people to buy the thing. We want people to purchase the device. So working backwards from that and thinking about our buyer personas, we really had to think, what information does our buyer persona need to go from the point of seeing the homepage for the first time to actually clicking that add to cart button? So we set out the design, we really looked, we have two buyer personas. We've got the physicians who are really interested in the technology of the device and kind of learning what makes it tick. And we've got the athletes and trainers that are really interested in how this particular device is going to make them better at what they do. So we approach this from the side of, okay, someone gets to the homepage. We want it to be really clear up front which path you're supposed to take based on the information you want to acquire. And then, so we basically divide our homepage into two funnels, and that would, bring each buyer persona down the sales funnel to actually buy the device by providing value to them in the form of content and images and graphics and whatever that might, or whatever that is. Yeah. So ultimately we wanted to, we worked backwards to make sure that they had all the information they needed to be pushed down that funnel and ultimately make that purchase. And thinking about the goal first, really, I don't know if we ever would have approached that design that way without thinking about our buyer personas and our goal in that backwards thinking way.
Exactly. Buyer personas are very, very key to actually hit the persona and the people and the target audience that you're trying to go for. So if we could have just put simply on this example site here, we could have just put buy now device. Sure, that might work, but as well as trying to provide the right information to the certain buyer persona sets to get them down the path they need and the information they need to be provided in order to purchase your product or solution.
Yeah, exactly. So next is the sitemap. And I don't think a lot of people realize just how important the sitemap is. From a design standpoint, once, as the web designer, once I actually start coding pages and designing individual pages, the sitemap is basically my holy grail of information. It gives me that really clear way to move forward. But from a non-design perspective, when you're still in the planning stages, it gives you a really good visual representation of all of the pages of your site. So you can actually start thinking about what's going to go on these pages. It's your content map in terms, and also your navigation map. And it's really going to give you a good perspective on the overall size of your site. And, maybe you're looking at your sitemap and you're like, oh my goodness, we have 49 pages. Well, I thought we were going to have 20. So you can start looking at why that maybe happened, and you can address any concerns with redundancies. And, if there's any content, you can start to consolidate things, or alternatively, you can expand things. Maybe you say, okay, we have an About Us page, and on that page, we're going to have, all of our team members, our company history, and any job openings. And you sit there and you look at that, all the content that's going on the page, you're like, well, maybe we should move jobs to its own page and kind of feature that. So it just gives you a good perspective, I think, kind of that bird's eye view of everything. Because, sorry, go ahead.
So I was just going to add to that, sitemaps being that important is that you can always revisit them too.
Oh yeah.
That's the great thing. They're a very functional piece of the process, but they're also can be very fluid.
Definitely.
Just like if someone wants to have all those things on one page, you can change, you can, make it so that it actually fits the wants and needs, the goals of your actual website to fulfill the overall user experience.
Yeah. And you might be amazed at how many times your sitemap changes throughout this process. You might think you want one thing, but actually you lay it out and you're like, well, that doesn't really make sense. They have to click on 4 pages just to get to this one page. Maybe we should restructure that so it comes up a little bit. But yeah, it's a really good visual way. I mean, it's hard because the internet and building a website, it's all so, up in the air. To actually lay it out on a piece of paper, I think is really helpful. But I'm a visual creature too. So then that brings us to our second secret in this kind of planning phase, which really, when you're coming up with all these ideas about functionality and all this stuff, don't be afraid to look for inspiration from other sites out there, whether that's for competition or others outside your industry. This certainly isn't an invitation to steal anything. Never steal images or code. That's bad. But, this is an invitation to look to others, see if you can see what's working, if you can give your web designer and say, here's 5 sites I love, but I really hate these 5, that's going to be really invaluable feedback to them. They're going to know right away what your design style is and what you're going to like and what you're not going to like. And I think it's also good, you can try to analyze, this site looks really trustworthy because they're using a lot of pictures of their office and their team. Or I really like this photo gallery, this before and after thing, or whatever it might be. It's going to save everyone time and resources up front if you can say, here's what I want because I saw this. Let's make that happen. Does that make sense for my brand? So really, don't be afraid of that. So we have our goals and our sitemap and our functions. And the next step is actually thinking about what we're actually going to put on these pages. The content.
Content.
It seems like design might be the next step, but
we have to throw content in.
We have to throw content in there.
Everybody thinks they want to see their site and they want to, have this beautiful design, but realistically, content is going to drive the design.
Exactly. That's why content should come before design. So especially if you're kind of thinking about that responsive web design approach, you have to think about content before you think about design, because the amount of content you have and the type of content you have is really going to inform that site's layout. If you think about it, people don't come to your website and say, oh my gosh, I love that blue color they use for the navigation, or the typography in that sidebar is just so beautiful. No, they're coming to read content or see an image, watch a video, and they come for the content, and maybe they stay for the design if it's good.
Sure. Yeah.
Or they might leave if it's bad, but they're definitely coming for the content.
They're coming for answers and solutions, and hopefully your site is providing those. And the thing that too, as you mentioned, is they're coming for that content. It's kind of interesting that you point that out, because people that are coming to your website for that content, which is going to be another section we'll move on to a little bit later here, is the whole SEO piece, bringing in what they're actually looking for, providing value.
Absolutely. And I have this image on here, this idea of progressive enhancement. The problem we're still seeing now is that people are thinking about websites in their largest context. But the reality is, and what you probably noticed if you dug in your analytics, is that more and more people are going to interact with your brand for the first time from your website on their phone. So if you think about gathering all the content you're ever going to want, all the text, images, and design a website in a way that's going to fit for those people on the smallest screen, then you really have nowhere to go but up. You're not trying to fit this huge chunk or this huge website onto a little screen, but you're designing for the little screen, and then it's just a good experience for everyone across the board. You're maintaining all the same information, your website says all the same things, but you're not assuming anything about how they're looking at it, and you're not assuming anything about the context in which they're looking at it, which is really important.
And this beautiful graphic comes to us from Brad Frost.
This is from Brad Frost.
A pioneer in the responsive web design movement.
He is. He writes a lot about responsive web design. I think this really shows you, I don't really understand what the glass of water is, but it works. We'll use it. We'll go with it.
Yes.
The big glass of water won't fit inside the little phone, but the little glass of water will fit inside the big desktop.
Very easily.
So when we're actually thinking about, sitting down to write this content, a website redesign is always kind of a somewhat aspirational practice, and you usually go into it in some way wanting to reinvent yourself or present your brand at its very best. But if you're trying to reinvent yourself as, say, I don't know, the most innovative marketing company in the world, you're gonna need some content to back that up. So first things first, you're gonna want to go back to that, the goals, your website goals, your business goals. Make sure that the content you're creating aligns with that brand messaging. And 2, don't forget that content doesn't have to just be text. It can be infographics. It can be other graphics. It can be videos. An introduction video is a great way a great thing to have on your homepage and immediately say, hi, we're so-and-so, and we're great. People are really visual creatures too. Obviously the text is important, but don't overlook that when you're sitting down to create content. Another thing to think about is your voice, because the voice of your website is going to really set the tone from your brand. You don't want to use a voice that doesn't properly portray your brand to your audience. So, for example, some differences in voice might be a decision about formal versus an informal tone. Whereas a formal tone on a website might say, we wish to inform you of a new offer currently available. And conversely, an informal way to announce that would be, look out, we've got something awesome coming your way. And both of those can be good. Both of those could be good for a website, but it's really about who is your target audience? Who are you speaking with? You don't want to be IBM and talking in a really casual way, maybe, or whatever. You need to make sure that it's in line with what you're actually trying to do. And finally, make sure that what you're creating is easy to understand. Don't overcomplicate things. Don't have unnecessary text. Say what you can in a
clear, concise, and efficient manner.
Yes, thank you. Mm-hmm. And someone's gonna want to know who you are, what you do, how you do it, maybe why you do it better than your competitors, all within the first couple seconds of you on your website. People are not that patient.
People have very little attention spans nowadays.
They do.
Even ourselves included.
That's true. And again, we can't finish talking about content without also mentioning blogging. So this is a little stat from HubSpot. 92% of companies who blog multiple times per day have acquired a customer from their blog. Now, that's multiple times per day. Maybe you can't blog that many times per day. That's okay. Even if you're blogging just 16 times a month, that can increase your leads by 3 times. Even if you're blogging less than that.
Even if you're just blogging in general, as long as you're being consistent. If you don't have the resources to blog as often as you'd like to, or as much as the statistics say that you need to in order to increase your business by X amount, that's still okay. Doing something is better than nothing, but as long as you do it consistently, you will see results.
Yeah, and they always say your website's your online storefront. And if that's the case, then your blog's your best salesperson. You'd be amazed. People that can get value from your blog before even speaking with you are already going to have that loyalty to your brand. Like Spencer said earlier, we've got some SEO benefits from creating this kind of content. Every post is like a page. Mm-hmm. That's going to help you get indexed, might help you get some inbound links. And like you said, keeping it content fresh and updated and with the frequency that you can manage, that's going to make your brand look reliable online. So if you don't have a blog, definitely talk to whoever's working on your website about building one into your redesign, or maybe working one into kind of a phase 2 of your redesign. Mm-hmm. And if you do have a blog right now and you're not posting on it, then definitely use this redesign as a motivation to revamp those efforts, because it is really important.
Yep.
And secret number 3 is SEO is changing. Can't finish up a conversation about content without also addressing the current state of SEO. We talked about it a couple times, but I kind of just want to walk you through what we're seeing happening and how that might relate to your content creation on your redesign. So old SEO, it was the practice of a lot of keywords, putting those in meta descriptions, using them in headers, writing a lot of content that used a lot of keywords, whatever you could do to put those words out there as much as possible so that Google would recognize and rank you towards the top. So the shift we've seen, this new SEO, and what we're kind of going through right now is the idea of fresh, original content that addresses the problems, needs, wants of your target audience. And this is what a lot of blogging and content marketing is about. Just putting content out there that answers questions, that, instead of just being keywords, something that provides value. Mm-hmm. Now, in the future, what we're going to start seeing, and if you're thinking about a website redesign right now, then you can definitely start thinking this way of this future SEO, this semantic search, which is this focus on conversations rather than keywords. And it's a little bit of the content marketing, but it's more than that.
It's definitely more than that.
Google is basically going to start thinking like a person. And it's going to know the difference. It's going to know when you type in Apple, it'll know whether you're talking about the fruit or the iPhone. It's becoming more intuitive, and it's understanding more about context.
Exactly. And to further examine that too, it's not only are search engines becoming smarter and algorithms are changing to be more intuitive and this more semantic search ideation, but as well as people, us, we, me and JC, and you listening, we are becoming smarter searchers.
Yeah.
So instead of this simple concept of, I'm looking to buy a dog kennel, right? So I type in dog kennels. Like that was the old idea of SEO. New SEO is, we're as searchers, we're getting smarter, typing in longer tail searches and more targeted questions. Like, I'm looking to buy a dog kennel for my yellow lab, let's say.
Right.
So that's more of that conversational concept surrounding the idea rather than just
now you're
dog
going to get
kennel.
results about what size you need based on the dog breed you typed in, and all of these things are going to start coming together, and Google's basically going to be smarter than us all.
Someday Google will take over, yes. But also, just a quick add here on this secret idea is that, search engines also are, yes, becoming smarter, and the idea of semantic search kind of infusing in that, but actually, I have no idea. I didn't know where I was going. I had an idea in my head. JC, go ahead, JC.
I was just going to say that, when you're thinking about your redesign, something you can do right now to kind of contribute to this future semantic search is maybe talk to your designer about the schema markup.
Oh, yes.
That's where you're
That's what I was, yeah, schema markup. There you go.
For example, if you have a website and maybe you post events on it, you can tell Google that the information you're posting is indeed an event.
Yes.
So the schema markup, I'm not going to go into too much about it right now, but it basically creates kind of this map for Google to read through your site and say, oh, okay, that's an event. And then when someone looks for a seminar in your area, your results might be linked to higher because Google knows what the context of that is.
Exactly. People aren't searching for companies. People are searching for solutions to their problems.
There you go.
So that's what I was looking for.
Thanks. All right. So moving on, the fun part. Yay.
Yay, we got to the design part.
We get to the
Finally.
design part. Yeah, Spencer's a graphic designer and I'm a web designer. So we like the design part. So I'll just kind of walk through briefly what our internal process looks like a little bit. We start the same way I told you to start, with that discovery process, goal setting. We will participate in a couple of discovery meetings with our clients just to get a really good idea about what their goals are, what they want users to be able to accomplish. From there, we'll help generate those ideas about what functionality needs to be based on those goals. We will definitely ask for that information about competitors. We're absolutely going to ask for what websites they like. It is so helpful for us to have that jumping off point. And we also talk a lot about their business organization structure and a little bit of their sales process, just to help understand and familiarize ourselves with. So when a customer goes to the website and completes that process, what happens next? How do they be a customer with your company?
How do you further that conversation?
Yeah.
How do you keep providing a potential customer or prospect with added value beyond just whatever your website might provide?
Yeah, and then I guess what the clients often don't see is the kind of, we brainstorm a lot. We get out the whiteboards. We write a lot of things down. We'll start site mapping. If we don't already have one, we'll do a lot of that. We'll start generating wireframes and mock-ups and layouts. And if we've got multiple different types of pages, we'll start thinking about, okay, this design works for the home page, but what does it look like when they're on the About Us page? How does that translate?
How do those internal pages look? How does it look on a mobile device, on a smartphone, a tablet, laptop, desktop? That's that whole RWD thinking again.
Yeah, definitely. We sometimes we'll have really good ideas and we'll say, hold on, maybe that's not going to work so well on a phone. Like, that's really a big picture idea. So we'll figure out how we can translate those larger than life desktop ideas to be a good mobile experience, because we do realize that a lot of people's customers are on their phones.
Exactly.
So then from there, we'll provide mock-ups and homepage. Like I said, we do the internal pages. Spencer is going to make a lot of custom images and icons. And then we kind of push into that coding and development side. So for our process, we try to keep a relatively good handle on what web design trends are. Mm-hmm. We do a lot of reading and writing internally about things we're seeing out there. And where we can, we try and give good feedback to our clients on what's going to work and what's not going to work for their designs.
Yes.
So I think to an extent, we try not to be too trendy. I don't know, that might not be the right word, but we try to make sure that what we're doing, if we're spending all this time and resources to undergo this process, we want to make sure that what we're doing is still going to be relevant a year from now. We don't want it to be stale and stagnant.
People pay a lot of money for websites and website redesigns, and it's in a couple months you don't want your website to be something of the past. You want it to withstand more time than just a short amount of time.
Right. So, one thing we're seeing a lot of right now is these really big background images and just a little bit of text on the homepage. Now, I think that is something that's still going to be a good design direction in a year or so. Parallax is one that's kind of up in the air. A lot of people are doing parallax websites. They look really cool, but they don't always translate so well to mobile. They might not be so great for SEO. So we really try to take a lot of those new things with a grain of salt and use them where we feel they work best.
Exactly.
And when the target audience wants that, needs that.
Wants and needs of the target audience are still our number one priority based upon whatever trend or design elements we are going to use on either our site or some company or organization's website redesign.
Yeah. And so back to responsive web design again. You've heard us talk about this a couple times throughout this, but just to give you a little information about why it is so important and why we talk about it so much. In 2012, the average number of unique screen resolutions was 97. A year ago, that went up to 232. It's probably a lot more now. So you can see that there's really no way to say all of my customers are on their laptops or all of my customers are on their phone. What phone? Are they on an iPhone? Are they on this Galaxy S5? Are they on a Razor? Or, I don't know. There's a lot of different ways that someone could come to your website, and you are going to, what am I trying to say? If you take the time up front to think about responsive web design, you're gonna save a lot of resources, I think, in the end. So basically, I hopefully I'm being clear about what I mean when I say this, but responsive web design is that method of building a website that's going to respond to a user's device. The layout's going to change based on the size of the device, but the content's going to stay the same. You may see some websites out there that have the URL that starts with m. Well, that means they have a mobile website, which is okay, but the mobile website says we're only going to load certain things to this person because they're on their phone. Well, we don't really think that works. We think that you should provide everyone the same experience with your website, regardless of the device they're using.
Creating that content hierarchy depending on what it is, the experience that you want to give to someone, and exactly how it's laid out across all devices.
Right. And two, with the mobile website, then you're taking care of two websites. Every time you update something, you have to update it on the other one. Where with responsive web design, it's just one website. So your redesign is actually going to go a lot further for the mere fact that it's going to be compatible on any device. So ultimately, we think it's the best strategy for reaching the largest variety of devices, but with the least fragmentation of access.
So with that, I got a mobile stat coming in.
Hit us with the stat.
Mobile stat. So in 2011, talking about mobile browsing, in 2011, 11% of mobile browsing was on a mobile device, and then in 2013 that moved up to 25% of browsing was from a mobile device, smartphone, tablet size. And in 2014 we're going to probably see mobile browsing overtake traditional desktop browsing. So to say that your users aren't A, scrolling, B, searching, when we think of us in our workplaces and stuff like that, our laptop has become our desktop. And even if we have a desktop monitor, then sure, that's still our desktop. But people work from all different places, from a park bench to an airplane. It all depends. People are on their smaller devices.
For some people, their phone is their computer.
Exactly.
That's it. Just because they're on a quote unquote mobile device doesn't even always mean that they're mobile. So for a lot of websites, they'll say, oh, well, I need to put my phone number at the top of the site that shows up on the phone version of my site because everyone's trying to find me or call me because they're lost, because they're out and about or whatever. But in reality, they might just be laying on their couch trying to look up, what your menu is if you're a restaurant or something like that.
Exactly.
So that's a little bit about why we feel so strongly about responsive web design. I really do think it's the future of web. And secret number 4, designer problems.
Hashtag designer problems.
Hashtag designer problems. I just want to talk a little bit about some issues Spencer and I and the whole team have kind of time and time again come across as we're going through website redesigns, maybe just so you don't fall into the same things that we're seeing. So sometimes that little tip that I have about going out and finding inspiration online can backfire a little bit on me, because a client will bring back an idea that isn't necessarily the best choice for them or their brand at that time. So one example that immediately comes to mind is the slider. And in theory, I can see why it seems like a really good idea to have a slider. You know, you could put a lot of different types of content and offers right away on your page. You don't have to give anything any hierarchy. They're all the most important because they're all at the same spot on the page. And we have a slider on our website.
We do.
For that same reason, we thought it would be a great approach. However, we have learned not so much. So statistically, what happens is only 1% of web visitors are actually going to click on a slider. And of that small 1%, 89% of those people are going to click on the first thing anyway.
It's kind of like Google, search engines.
Yeah.
It's the same concept. If you have 5 sliders on the front of your website because you think you want to pack in all this content there, it's kind of like ranking on Google. Not many people I know, but maybe I'm just a small example that not many people go past page 1 of Google. They're going to type in a different result to find the answer or solution they're looking for.
Right. So, it seems like something that solves a lot of problems in terms of content, but I think it's much better just to pick something that's going to stay on that spot on the homepage, let it stay there, and then you just don't have to worry about the slider. So we say no to sliders, and when we redesign our website, we will be removing it. Another thing is the idea of the fold. A lot of clients really stress out about having to try and fit as much information as they can above the so-called fold of the website so that the user doesn't have to scroll. And the thing about that is, when you're thinking of print, it's really obvious where the fold is because it's a static thing. But on a website, where is the fold? If I'm on my phone or my tablet or my laptop or my desktop, the fold changes for every single one of those devices. So it's impossible to design or try and fit a lot of stuff above the fold. And the other thing is, no one really cares about having to scroll. I mean, do you care, Spencer, when you're reading something?
I don't care. We've gotten so accustomed to having a smaller device in our hands that we know there's information past what we're looking at.
Right. I think actually our phones and our touchscreens have made us really accustomed to that. So it's okay. If we don't see what we're looking for, the first thing we see on the site, we'll probably scroll down a little bit to go see if it's there.
As well as the stat that we provided earlier that in 2014 here, we are going to see mobile browsing surpass desktop browsing in searches.
And there's entire websites that are one-page websites where all of the information is on one page.
On one page.
So I think it's okay. I think we can stop stressing about the fold. It will just create a good design and say, scroll down if you want to see more.
Yes.
It's all right. And finally, stock images. A lot of times we will mock up a website design with, like I said, that really big background image. And then we have to go to the client and say, okay, how are we going to get that picture? Like, oh, we'll just use a stock picture. It's like, well, I don't know. On your blog, sure, use stock images. That's okay. It's a nice visual thing and you don't, that's fine. But I think when it comes to your homepage, your About Us page, your team pages, anything that represents your brand, you really want to create that trustworthiness and that transparency by using pictures of yourself. So allocate those resources to just get a photographer, or Spencer will come into your office and take pictures for you.
Yeah, I can come in and take pictures.
So that's secret number 4, designer problems. And finally, our step 5 is our testing and analysis. We've done all this content, we've done all our planning, and we're excited about our design, we're ready to move forward, but it's really important not to miss this last testing step.
And let's grab this really quick question here from Sheila. She asks, if you are removing your slider, A, what are you putting in that space? And B, where are you moving the content in the slider to?
It's a great question. So I think just a little bit of based on what we started doing planning for our own website redesign, I think we're going to replace that slider with a static CTA. I think that's kind of the direction we're moving towards, just because we want to provide value right up front. And then we're actually going to make our site a little bit longer. We were even stressed about the fold for a while and worried about putting as much as we can. So we're going to make our users scroll through the site to learn a little bit about who we are and what we do.
Exactly.
And I think, with the slider too, you really want the first thing someone sees when they come to your website to be who you are and what you do. And,
exactly.
or how you can provide value to your customer.
The slider idea does go back to, providing value to your customer. It goes back to, so the question, what are you putting in that space? It's back to buyer persona. So our example before we used a Moxie monitor, we had the physicians for the medical device, and we had the actual athletes and trainers. So it depends on the path you want your visitors to take. Sure, within that first 5 seconds, you want them to know who you are and what you do, but you also need to provide the upfront value there instead of maybe just being, you think that a slider provides value, but with the statistics out there that show that people aren't actually scrolling through those and they're moving down through the page, that's where then you can take those slider elements and move them out to become more smaller, targeted and focused spots on that homepage.
Yeah, that site's a good example too, because what we actually ended up doing was dividing that kind of, they call it like the hero space, like that big header image. We divided that into 2 clear CTAs, I guess. They're not really
CTAs, paths of direction.
Yeah, so instead of doing slide 1 is for physicians, slide 2 is for athletes, we just put it all out and open. Put it all on the front of the page.
And let the user, having that user provide their own experience.
But not hiding anything from them. Yeah.
Exactly.
So there's a couple different ways to do that.
So we hope that answers. Oh, yes. You're welcome, Sheila.
So we're back to just kind of, I'll talk a little bit about just some things you can do to ensure that your launch is going to be a successful one. Before you launch a website, you just want to make sure that you've taken all the time to do any cross-browser testing. Definitely test an Internet Explorer, I'd say, is the key to that. Even, it's something that can often get overlooked just because it's not available for most mobile devices. But a lot of new coding techniques aren't going to work properly on Internet Explorer, so just make sure that that's part of your process. Test forms. Make sure that anyone that needs to receive the details of this form is actually getting it. Test links. Look for broken links. Make sure that your old link pages, you have 301 redirects set up for them so that it's kind of a really seamless transition from old site to new. And check for grammar and spelling errors.
These may seem, pretty obvious.
They may seem obvious, but sometimes this stuff gets overlooked in the excitement of the site launch. So it's just important to take the time to do this. And 2, just now that you've kind of gone through the design process, you can bring back, other people in your organization to test the site for you. You're going to get a lot of feedback about things that don't work. But that's good to happen internally before you get that feedback from your customers instead.
Yes.
You'll probably get some good feedback too, but definitely what's not working. So in addition, also test on as many devices as you have at your disposal. We certainly do not have 232 plus devices in our office.
Right. So getting that feedback from family and friends and, even and anyone you can get feedback from is always great.
Most designers, and what we do here is we build all of our websites on kind of a testing domain and then send out that link. So your old website will still be there in the process of allowing you to test it. So you're not making anything live until you feel like you've got everything under control.
And there are plenty of tools out there as well that designers, I know we use here, that we can test and do the quality assurance testing on and show us different device sizes and kind of plan for that.
Yeah, there's a lot of online resources for device testing, definitely. And there's also online resources for user testing, which I think is a really important thing as well. Whether you're monitoring the success of your website post-launch or pre-launch. So this usertesting.com is a really good one for a pre-launch user test. You can basically assign a task and say you've got a hotel website. You could say, hey, I would really like you to try and book a hotel room for 2 nights. You'll get a video of them with their on-camera reactions. They'll talk to you. They'll say, oh, I'm having trouble selecting my city or whatever it might be. Just get that real world stuff. Because something, you might think something is really obvious on your website, but then you start going through these processes and having other people come in, and it's clear that maybe it needs some extra work. Mouse flow is one that basically gives you video of the screen of your website, and you can watch someone's mouse move around on it, watch them scroll down, see how much time they're spending on pages. Again, you don't get the verbal feedback from the user, but you can see and make some assumptions about what they're doing.
So that's more of a a post.
That'd be a post. Yeah, that's for more long-term monitoring. And Crazy Egg is one that we also use, again, for the post-launch monitoring. And that generates a heat map for you of your website pages and shows you what a lot of people are clicking on, maybe what not so many people are clicking on. Mm-hmm. You know, you can get some data about scrolling and stuff like that.
And that will help you in refining, sort of that phase 2 or moving beyond the launch.
And it can help you with testing some different links, and maybe you're seeing that a lot of people are clicking on the pages that say, I don't know, maybe you're doing a trial versus a demo, and you see that heat map shows you that demo is red. People want that demo, but trial not so much. So maybe you can start to think about, it just gives you those benchmarks again, lets you analyze and move forward. Because really, I think it's important to remember that just because you do a website redesign doesn't mean you can forget about it for another 3 years until you're ready to do your next redesign. I think to get the most out of it, you have to constantly keep checking and making sure that things are going okay. It's like anything else. And that's our final secret. Your redesign might not be perfect at first. It might not immediately give you the results you want. But I think that the reason that we spend so much time making these goals, setting these goals, mapping out these needs is to really build this good framework for something solid that's going to work for the future. And marketing in general is just about refining, analyzing, fixing. It's a lot of trial and error. But like I said, if you've taken the time to think about these goals, carefully plan this redesign, then your efforts are actually going to pay off in the long run, because you've done a lot to really establish your solid online presence. And that's going to just jumpstart you into the rest of your marketing efforts.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it's good stuff. So yeah, just as a recap, it's really important to be upfront about goals from the get-go. Don't save them until after you've already picked a design. Map out your needs. Your goals are going to tell you what you need on your website, that functionality. Though in that planning stage, the site maps are going to help you do your content. Your content is definitely going to inform your design. And then just make sure you're testing and analyzing your results. Part of setting those quantifiable goals is so now you can look at your analytics a month after your launch and see, has anything changed? Is this website doing what we set out to have it do? And that's, it's marketing.
And that's your secrets to a successful website redesign. I know we've answered some questions throughout the way here. If anybody has any, you can type them now into the chat pane or the questions panel. We'll be happy to answer those. You can reach out to us as well via Twitter or our website. Feel free. We're here and ready, willing, and open to answer all of your design questions. We do have some resources on our website if you'd like to check those out at CynicorTech.com/resources. And you can check out some responsive web design.
Yeah, we've written a lot about that. We like that one.
We do enjoy responsive web design thoroughly over here.
Yeah.
So that's us at Cynicor. If anybody's got some questions coming through. We got one coming through. Sean, he asks, what is the #1 mistake or flaw that companies make when going through a website redesign? That's a great question. I know JC will be able to facilitate that, but my kind of thing is it's kind of hard to pinpoint the #1 mistake, because sometimes there are a lot of mistakes that happen.
I think, something like I said in the beginning, one thing that's really challenging up front is if someone just comes to you and says, I just don't like the way my website looks. And not having any real set of direction. I think if you're going to spend the time and resources undergoing a website redesign, then it's really important to think about how it's going to benefit your business. You want it to be something that's going to improve your brand. You know, you want it to be something that's going to generate more leads or more sales. You want it to be a good process. I think something else that maybe provides challenges going through is a lack of communication. I think it's really important to communicate throughout the process, even on the day-to-day stuff. I guess something else would maybe be not being forthcoming with resources. You know, like pictures and stuff like that. So I don't know. I think that, but that kind of goes back to the communication thing too. But most importantly, I think just being clear about your goals and using it as a way to forward your business.
Another question come through is, do you perform A/B testing or analysis, heat maps, etc. on your sites to optimize? And do you have any recommendations for tools or approaches?
Yeah, well, so we utilize the HubSpot platform. So for a lot of our CTAs, we do A/B test, and a lot of times it's actually really minute stuff. Like we might play around with, should this CTA for this ebook say download now, or should it say get your ebook? And then we'll just look at those little changes like the text on a button, just to see what seems to be more successful. I don't know. Do you want to expand on that at all?
No, yeah, that's good through the marketing automation software, as well as A/B testing landing pages and lead gen options. And through the heat mapping and stuff like that, we did have some of those resources that JC had pointed out. Some pre and post options. Those were, again, Crazy Egg. Yeah. And what was your middle one that you had?
Mouse Flow.
Yeah, Mouse Flow.
Yeah, Mouse Flow. You know, you can just kind of see with either of those what seems to be working. And sometimes with A/B testing, like I said, it is really important just to check little small things. So maybe more people are clicking on something that has this picture on it versus this picture. Just play around with words. And I'm pretty sure there's a way to do that in Google Analytics too.
Yes, Google Analytics is a big play.
And Google Analytics actually has a heat mapping function in that as well. If you have that set up, you can see on-page analytics and get those heat, similar to Crazy Egg, that heat mapping, and see what percentage of people are clicking on other things, on some things versus others. So that's actually another tool that you can use in addition to some of the ones we talked about earlier.
And someone asked if this presentation is going to be available for download, and yes, it will be. We'll have slides and audio following this presentation with a follow-up email that you will receive.
Yes.
Does anybody else have any other questions? I think we've answered everything within the chat pane.
I don't have any tweets.
No tweets. Nobody was active on Twitter today. That's okay though. So yeah, that's all we got today. We want to thank you guys for joining us and hanging out with us for the past hour or so.
Yeah, we hope we've given you some good insight into just a little bit what the process looks like from the eyes of people that have done it a couple times.
Just a couple.
Twice. Just once or twice.
All right. Well, thanks for everybody for joining today, and hope you have a great rest of your day.